This is what a narcissist does right before losing you. And I want to begin with the specific timing this title is pointing at, because right before losing you is one of the most psychologically revealing windows in the entire arc of a narcissistic relationship. Not the beginning, when the construction is at its most polished and its most deliberately presented. Not the middle, when the ordinary harmful functioning is operating with the efficiency of something that has found its rhythm. The specific window immediately before the loss. When something in the dynamic has shifted enough that the narcissist's system has begun detecting, however incompletely and however without conscious acknowledgement, that the loss is approaching. And what the system does in that specific window, the specific behaviors it produces in response to the approaching loss, is the most revealing thing the dynamic generates across its entire duration. Because it shows you, more completely than anything that preceded it, exactly what the relationship was actually organized around. And what it was organized around was never what it presented itself as being. Let's establish what produces the window in the first place, because the behaviors only make sense in the context of what is generating them. The window opens when the narcissist's monitoring system detects a specific change in the quality of your engagement with the dynamic, not the obvious, dramatic withdrawal that would announce itself clearly enough to trigger the standard supply restoration toolkit. Something more subtle than that, a shift in the frequency of your emotional availability, a reduction in the specific quality of attention you have been providing, a change in the texture of your responses that carries the specific signature of someone whose orientation toward the relationship has fundamentally altered, even if the surface behavior has not yet fully reflected the alteration. The monitoring system detects this change before you have necessarily made any conscious decision or taken any visible action. Before you may even have fully articulated to yourself that something has genuinely shifted. The system is reading the specific frequencies of your engagement with such continuous accuracy that it registers the change in those frequencies before the change has produced anything the conscious mind on either side has fully processed. What the system registers when it detects the shift is not grief, not the genuine, personally organized distress of someone who is losing a specific person they genuinely care about. What it registers is threat. The specific supply economics threat of a significant source moving toward unavailability. And the threat registration activates the system's response in the specific way that threat always activates the narcissist's system, not through the considered, emotionally organized response that genuine concern would produce, but through the automatic deployment of whatever tools the system's assessment of the situation identifies as most likely to address the threat efficiently. And the tools that get deployed in this specific window, right before losing you, are different in their character and their intensity from anything the dynamic has previously produced. They are more specifically targeted, more precisely calibrated to the specific frequencies the monitoring has been reading in you, more urgently deployed because the threat assessment has identified the window as narrow and the investment required to address it as significant. What the system produces in this window is its most honest behavioral expression. Not honest in the sense of genuine, the behaviors are as constructed as everything else the dynamic produces. Honest in the sense of revealing. The desperation of the system makes it less managed, less strategically organized, more specifically organized around the need it is trying to address. And need, when it is less managed, is more visible as what it actually is. The first thing the narcissist does right before losing you is the thing that is most immediately noticeable and most immediately confusing to the person who is on the verge of leaving. It is the sudden, specific return of the person who was present in the love-bombing phase. Not a gradual warming, not the incremental improvement that the ordinary relationship repair process produces. A sudden, quality shift return of the attentiveness, the apparent understanding, the specific quality of being seen and met that characterized the earliest phase of the relationship, and that has been absent or intermittent for long enough that its return is both immediately felt and immediately suspicious. The conversations have a different quality. The interest seems genuine again. The specific details of your life that the devaluation phase stopped registering are being registered again. The warmth that was withdrawn is returned with a completeness and an immediacy that does not match the gradual process that genuine relational repair requires. And this is the specific tell that most people in this position feel without being able to immediately name. Genuine repair is gradual because it requires the actual change of what produced the damage. What returns right before losing you is not the product of anything having changed. It is the product of the threat assessment having activated the love-bombing toolkit, the same toolkit that produced the original connection. Deployed now with the specific urgency of a system that has detected the approaching loss and is deploying its most historically effective tool in response to it. The second thing the narcissist does right before losing you is more specifically targeted than the first and requires the relationship's full history to be deployed with the precision the monitoring system's data allows. It is the specific, accurate engagement with your most significant unmet needs. The thing you have been trying to communicate throughout the relationship that was never adequately received. The need that the devaluation phase dismissed or minimized or reframed as your problem rather than as a genuine relational requirement. Right before losing you, that need is suddenly seen, suddenly acknowledged, suddenly engaged with in a way that produces the specific, complicated, hope-adjacent feeling of finally. And the finally quality is the most dangerous feature of this second behavior, because it is organized around something that is genuine, the need was real, the acknowledgement of it produces a real response, while being delivered through something that is constructed. The narcissist, right before losing you, is not seeing the need because genuine understanding has developed. The monitoring system has identified the need as the most specific lever available for addressing the threat of the approaching loss and has activated the behavior that engages with the lever most efficiently. The need is being used as the entry point for the threat management response. And the feeling of finally that the engagement produces is the threat management response working exactly as it was designed to work. The third behavior is the one that arrives with the most emotional weight, and that is the most specifically organized around what the monitoring system has identified as your deepest investment in the relationship. It is the vulnerability, the specific, apparently genuine, carefully timed expression of something in the narcissist that presents itself as the thing you have always wanted to see. The actual person underneath the construction, briefly and apparently authentically present, offering something that was always withheld and that the approaching loss has apparently finally made available. The timing is not accidental. The specific content of the vulnerability is not random. Both are the product of the monitoring system's assessment of what presentation would most specifically address the threat the approaching loss represents. The vulnerability is real in the sense that something is genuinely present in it. The actual self does respond to the approaching loss in the ways we have discussed in previous conversations. But the presentation of the vulnerability, the specific timing, the specific content, the specific register in which it is offered, is the construction's strategic deployment of the actual self's genuine response as the most efficiently targeted tool available for addressing the supply threat. And what comes after the third behavior, and why the pattern of all three together is the most important thing to recognize in this specific window, and what the person right before leaving deserves to understand about what the window is actually showing them. That is exactly where we are going next. What comes after the third behavior is the pattern that all three together reveal, and the pattern is more important than any individual behavior within it, because the pattern is what shows you, with a specificity that no individual behavior could produce alone, exactly what is driving everything you are witnessing in this window. The pattern is this: every single behavior right before losing you is organized around restoring your investment in the relationship rather than around examining what made your investment reasonable to withdraw. The love bombing return does not come with any acknowledgement of why the love bombing's absence was the natural consequence of what the devaluation phase produced. The engagement with your unmet need does not come with any genuine reckoning with why the need went unmet for the duration it went unmet. The vulnerability does not come with any honest accounting of what the vulnerability is responding to or what it is asking you to do with it in terms that are genuine rather than strategic. Every behavior in the window before losing you is aimed at you, at changing what you are doing, at restoring the supply flow that your approaching departure is threatening. Not one of the behaviors is aimed at the narcissist, at changing what they are doing, at the genuine, internal, self-directed work that genuine repair would require of someone who understood that their behavior was the primary cause of the approaching loss. This is the pattern's most specific and most important feature. Genuine repair in any relationship is primarily aimed inward before it is expressed outward. The person who genuinely understands that their behavior has produced the damage is primarily occupied with understanding and changing that behavior. The expression toward the person they harmed is the natural outgrowth of that internal work rather than the substitute for it. What the narcissist produces right before losing you is entirely outward, entirely aimed at you, entirely organized around producing a change in your behavior rather than around producing a change in theirs. And the absence of any inward work, the absence of the specific, uncomfortable, self-confronting examination that genuine repair requires, is what makes the pattern recognizable as threat management rather than genuine repair, regardless of how convincingly the individual behaviors present themselves as the latter. Now, here is what this means for you in the specific lived present tense experience of being in this window and receiving these behaviors. Because the theoretical understanding of what the pattern is does not automatically translate into the practical ability to navigate the window without being significantly affected by what the behaviors are activating. The love bombing return activates the memory of what the relationship felt like when it was good. The engagement with your unmet need activates the specific, genuine hope that the need might finally be met. The vulnerability activates the caring that was always genuinely present in you and that the relationship required at such cost precisely because of its genuineness. All of these activations are real. They are not signs of weakness or failure of discernment. They are the natural responses of a genuine person to things that were specifically designed to produce those responses in you specifically. What serves you in this window is not the suppression of those responses. It is the specific, honest, information-grounded question that the pattern makes possible to ask. The question is not whether what is being offered feels real. It does feel real. Parts of it are real. The question is whether what is being offered is organized around you or around the supply, whether the behaviors are the expression of genuine internal change or the deployment of the most efficient tools available for addressing the threat of the approaching loss. And the answer to that question is not found in the behaviors themselves. The behaviors are designed to be indistinguishable from genuine repair in their surface presentation. The answer is found in what accompanies the behaviors, in whether any of the inward work that genuine repair requires is present alongside the outward expressions, in whether the conversations that the behaviors initiate move toward genuine accountability or redirect toward the restoration of your investment before the accountability has been genuinely addressed, in whether the vulnerability leads somewhere honest or leads back to the supply relationship the vulnerability was strategically deployed to restore. The window right before losing you is the most information-rich moment in the entire arc of the relationship. Everything the relationship is actually organized around becomes most visible precisely when the threat of losing it activates the system's most urgent response. The urgency strips some of the management from the behaviors. The specificity of the targeting reveals what the monitoring has been tracking. The absence of any inward work reveals what the outward expressions are actually organized around. And all of this visibility is available to you, to the person who is in the window and who has enough clarity to read what the visibility is showing, if you know what you are looking for. What you are looking for is simple, and it is not found in the content of what is being said, or the warmth of how it is being delivered, or the apparent genuineness of the vulnerability that is being expressed. It is found in the direction of the work. Whose behavior is being examined? Whose patterns are being addressed? Whose internal experience is the primary subject of the repair attempt? If the repair attempt is primarily organized around your behavior, around what you need to do differently, around what you need to understand about the narcissist that would change how you are responding, around the restoration of your investment as the primary goal, then what you are witnessing is the threat management system doing what it does when a significant supply source is approaching unavailability. If the repair attempt is primarily organized around the narcissist's behavior, around the genuine, uncomfortable, self-directed examination of what they have done and why, and what would need to genuinely change, then something different might be present, something worth staying in the window long enough to assess more completely. The distinction is clear and it is observable, and it is the most honest thing, the window right before losing, you can show you about what the relationship has always been and whether what is being offered in this specific moment is something genuinely different, or the system's most effective available response to the most significant supply threat it has yet encountered. You are losing them because something in you has arrived at a clarity that the window's behaviors are designed to prevent from producing its natural conclusion. That clarity is the most valuable thing you have in this moment, more valuable than the warmth the behaviors are producing, more valuable than the hope the engagement with your needs is activating, more valuable than the finally of the vulnerability's apparent arrival. The clarity is yours. It was built through everything the relationship required you to survive. And the window right before losing you is asking you one question with more specificity and more urgency than the relationship has ever asked it before. The question is whether the clarity is going to be honored or whether what is being offered in the window is sufficient to replace the clarity with hope one more time. Only you can answer that. But now you have what you need to answer it honestly. And honest answers, in the specific window this episode has been about, are the only ones that actually serve the person giving them.